So before we get to the video, I got a question for y'all, and I've been struggling with this, and I've been trying to make sense of it in my head. Right? When it comes to history, I like to often question things, as do a lot of other people, but not from the standpoint of just arguing for the sake of argument or playing devil's advocate. No, from the sense of, what they're telling us isn't always the truth. And the way we see things aren't always the way we should be looking at them. So I was sitting here and I was thinking about history, and I was like, we always think of history in a way of man, and he starts with nothing, and then he learns, and then he develops, and then he implements, and he designs, and he creates, and then it's like going from out in the wilderness to modern day with all this technology. But what if that's not the case? What if when we look at history, it's the exact opposite? It started out with technology and all of that, and we declined down to living out in the wilderness, hunter-gatherers, you know what I'm saying? Living like nomads, eating what you kill, all of this type of stuff like that. What if it was the exact opposite of the way we've always thought of it? That was just something in my brain, and I just had to get it out, but I wanted to pose it to you guys before we got to the video, man. It's just something that's been on my mind. Maybe we're looking at this thing all wrong. When we look back and we look at how they were living in different things, what if that was after the fall of technology and everything like that? And that's the missing part. We didn't see them with the technology aspect. Just thought. This video here is archaeologists just found a 12,000-year-old structure older than the pyramids. Let's get to it.
They stopped for a rest, and they stopped in a place that today we call Nabta Playa.
Some things in history make you stop and question everything you thought you knew. You see, we like to believe civilization began with small villages, simple farming, and the slow climb toward greatness. But then archaeologists go and dig up something that flips the script entirely. And trust me, this latest discovery, it's a total game changer.
The grooves were carved. That's called fluting. And then a layer of plaster was added to make it look like marble.
We're talking about a 12,000-year-old structure that makes the Egyptian pyramids look like brand new apartment complexes. So hold on to your hats, because this find at Gobekli Tepe in Turkey is about to blow your mind. Let me take you back to 1963, where it all started.
Very sensitive site. It's one of the oldest sites in the world. So you're looking at
some sharp-eyed archaeologists from Istanbul University and the University of Chicago were kicking the dirt around in southeastern Turkey when they stumbled upon some stone tools. They guessed the site was Neolithic, which is just a fancy term for really, really old, but they had no clue just how colossal their find was. Fast forward to 1994, and enter Klaus Schmidt, a German archaeologist with a knack for recognizing the big deals in the dirt. Schmidt had been rooting around a similar site and had a hunch that Gobekli Tepe was not just another pile of rocks. His first clue, those massive stone slabs peeking out of the ground like nature's own game of hide and seek. Starting in 1995, Schmidt and his team began to dig. And oh boy, did they hit the jackpot. They uncovered gigantic T-shaped stone pillars, some towering at 16 feet tall and weighing a hefty 10 tons. But it wasn't just their size that was impressive. These pillars were decked out with carvings of all sorts of critters: foxes, lions, scorpions, and even vultures. It's like the ancient artists were trying to one-up each other in an epic stone-carving showdown. Using ground-penetrating radar, a tool that's as sci-fi as it sounds, they discovered at least 16 more stone circles buried beneath the surface. Turns out, Gobekli Tepe wasn't just a site, it was a mega-site, constructed way back when everyone was still living the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. Schmidt's theory? This place was the original party central, a temple where folks from all over came to hang out and maybe partake in a ritual or two. It's a groundbreaking idea, pun intended, because it suggests these ancient builders were throwing up monumental structures long before they figured out farming or settled into villages. The discovery of Gobekli Tepe turned the archaeological world on its head.
See, that's the thing. We're assuming based on some small amount of evidence we've seen over the years, right? And I say small, but it's still grand in the grand scheme of things. But the small amount of information, we assume that they didn't understand farming or have some sense of farming. That's why I say looking at things differently, or just having that thought of assuming that they do know, assuming that they did have the information, building wise, farming wise. See, I just think I'm starting to arrive at that thought more and more, that they had the information due to the information they gathered from their past.
It wasn't just about finding a bunch of old stones. It was about uncovering evidence that our ancestors were capable of pulling off massive projects together long before they settled down to become farmers. This could mean that the urge to gather and celebrate was the real catalyst for forming permanent communities and eventually cultivating crops. Not to be outdone, let's jet over to France in the 1950s, where workers in Brittany were just doing their thing, breaking rocks on private land for paving stones. Little did they know they were about to stumble upon the Cairn of Barnenez, a Neolithic megastructure so old it makes the Egyptian pyramids look like recent construction projects. We're talking about a structure that dates back to around 4,800 BC. Yes, that's over 6,800 years ago. So this cairn, right near Pluisoc, turned out to be one of the oldest man-made structures on the planet. Imagine quarry workers in the mid-20th century just doing their thing, blasting away, when suddenly, oops, what's this? An ancient burial chamber? That's exactly what happened in 1955, when the activities at the quarry accidentally cracked open several chambers inside the cairn. Enter Pierre Roland Gillot, an archaeologist who was basically the Indiana Jones of the University of Rennes. He caught wind of this monumental boo-boo and quickly intervened. Recognizing the site's massive historical significance, Gillot got the quarrying stopped and rolled out a rescue excavation plan.
See, people look at this and they say, wow, how did they know? Where did that? And now I'm starting to look at this and say, yo, they were forced out here. I'm thinking they were forced to move out here, and they had to take the knowledge that they gained to design something like this. And the knowledge that they had was enough to create or build something that withstood centuries of weather, of whatever that came through, and still hasn't knocked us down.
Between 1955 and 1968, under Gillot's watchful eye, the site underwent a major facelift. Vegetation was cleared and the entire area was studied meticulously. The cairn itself is no small potatoes. It measures a whopping 72 meters in length and 25 meters in width, with a height of over 8 meters. We're talking about a structure made of roughly 13,000 to 14,000 tons of stone. And here's a fun fact. It wasn't built all at once. The builders of Barnenez kicked things off with local dolerite stone between 4,850 and 4,250 BC, and then added more flair with granite from nearby quarries between 4,450 and 4,000 BC. Inside, the cairn was like a walk-through gallery of Neolithic art. The walls of its 11 separate burial chambers were decorated with engravings of axes, bows, and serpentine shapes. And the goodies didn't stop there. Archaeologists digging through the site also found pottery shards, polished stone axes, and flint tools, everyday items of the people who built this massive tomb. Thanks to Gillot's sharp eye and quick thinking, the Cairn of Barnenez was saved from becoming just another road in France. It's now recognized for its incredible historical importance, offering us a glimpse into the architectural and artistic skills of Neolithic societies. And while we're on the subject of ancient structures, let's not forget the Ggantija temples in Gozo, Malta. Dating back to around 3600 BC, these structures aren't just old, they're practically prehistoric, and their name, it comes from the Maltese word Gant, which means giant. According to local legends, these massive temples were built by giants. Now let's rewind to 1827, when Colonel John Otto Bayer, the then Lieutenant Governor of Gozo, decided it was time to play in the dirt. He kicked off the first known excavation of the site. You'd think he'd treat every unearthed item like a treasure, right? Wrong. Sadly, during his dig, the soil and artifacts were tossed aside without much thought, losing oodles of valuable archaeological info to the winds of carelessness. But the temples were no secret even before Bayer started digging up a storm. Back in the late 1700s, a French artist named Jean-Pierre Howar came by, took one look at the ruins, and went to town with his sketchpad. His detailed drawings, made before any formal digs, turned out to be spot on, and are now a goldmine for understanding the site's original swagger. After Bayer's time, the temples kind of fell off the radar. Talk about being ghosted by history. It wasn't until they made the antiquities list of 1925 that people began to take notice again. Jump to 1933, and the Maltese government said, "Enough is enough," and took over the land. This kicked off a flurry of archaeological investigations that lasted until 1959, with the goal of sprucing up the place and figuring out what the ancients were up to. Fast forward to 1980, and bam! UNESCO steps in and declares the Ggantija temples a World Heritage Site. Since then, it's been one restoration project after another, all in the name of keeping the temples standing and schooling us about the Neolithic period. And if
I know that's a topic that's going to be forever debated, right? Whether or not you should restore, mess with, you know what I mean? History like this. Or do you just let it wither away, let it collapse on itself, let it destroy or implode within itself? What do you do? What do you do? Like, because part of me wants to say, man, you don't restore this. You don't. You figure out a way to keep it from deteriorating further, but you don't restore. You don't mess with this piece of history like that. But then there's a part of me like, yeah, we need to restore this, keep this up as long as we possibly can, you know? But I wrestle with that because I think the majority of me wants to say, you don't mess with this. You don't restore this. You don't. Because then it has an end date to it where it says it withstood from here to here. They designed something that withstood this amount of time. You kind of diminish it when you start to restore it. I don't think I like it.
If that wasn't cool enough, in 2013, the Ggantija Heritage Park threw open its doors. Complete with an interpretation center, it's the perfect spot for anyone looking to dive deep into the life and times of those who walked these lands over 5,000 years ago. However, it was around the same time that Newgrange, in County Meath, Ireland, was hanging around. In 1699, a local landowner named Charles Campbell was doing a bit of quarrying on his land, probably hoping to find something mundane, like stone. Instead, he stumbled across the entrance to what turned out to be an ancient tomb. This unexpected discovery grabbed the attention of Edward Llwyd, a Welsh antiquarian who was quick to explore the site. He wasn't exactly charmed, though, referring to the carvings he found as barbarous sculpture. Inside, he spotted animal bones and beads, which must have been quite the sight. Following in Llwyd's footsteps, other scholars, including the notable Sir Thomas Molyneux from Trinity College Dublin, made their way to Newgrange. Molyneux found human remains within the tomb, which certainly spiced up the mystery of the place. The real game changer in understanding Newgrange came between 1962 and 1975 when archaeologist Michael J. O'Kelly led a major excavation and restoration project. he uncovered the full grandeur of Newgrange, revealing its clever design aligned with the winter solstice sunrise. On the shortest day of the year, the rising sunbeams straight into the inner chamber through a special roof box above the entrance. This neat architectural trick highlights the astonishing astronomical smarts of its ancient builders. O'Kelly and his crew didn't just hit the jackpot with cool sun tricks, they also found a treasure trove of artifacts. They unearthed both burnt and unburnt human bones, along with what might have been grave goods or votive offerings. This peek into the burial practices and ceremonial life at Newgrange tells us that this place was more than just a tomb. It was a significant ceremonial site. What's equally impressive are the 97 large curbstones encircling the mound, many engraved with mysterious megalithic art. The entrance stone, with its striking carvings, is particularly famous. These symbols have been teasing the brains of archaeologists and visitors alike for centuries. Even though the Nap of Howar, nestled on the windswept island of Papa Westray in Orkney, Scotland, doesn't tell a story of striking carvings, it is much older than the pyramids. Built around 3700 BC, we're talking about one of the oldest stone residences in northern Europe. Now, in the 1920s, a fierce storm ruffled the Scottish coastlines. Amidst the aftermath, William Trail, the landowner, spotted something incredible. Pieces of sturdy stone walls peeking out from the earth, like history begging to be rediscovered. Intrigued, so was he. By the summer of 1929, Trail and his buddy William Kirkness started digging, and they finally hit the historic jackpot. They uncovered not one, but two stone buildings linked by a passage, initially believed to be relics from the Iron Age. Fast forward to the 1970s, and enter archaeologist Anna Ritchie. With a fresh set of eyes and modern techniques, Ritchie dives into the site and unveils a truth that sends shockwaves through the archaeological community.
Like, look at this, right? I'm almost a little bit jealous of them, in a sense, right? Because I look at this and I say, okay, what if this is somebody's home? You know, what if this is somebody's home? They probably didn't have to pay no tax on it. It was theirs once they got finished building it. They ain't have to worry about nobody ever coming to take it over, repossess it, or whatever, foreclose on it. You know, like, we think of this, our day and time, and we think of their day, their time. And yes, they dealt with some things that we definitely don't want to deal with, and vice versa. But just looking at just this portion of it, you think about in a time where there's always a threat of economic collapse and different things happening, or what they can do, and tariffs and all that type of stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. I know they had their problems, and they would probably exchange some of their problems for our problems and vice versa. But just looking at one aspect of it, just having something that's your own, yours. And when you say you're leaving it behind, you can actually leave it behind with no threat of, or I guess there is a threat of somebody overthrowing this area, taking over and forcing you and your family out into the world, back into the world, into the cold or stuff like that. So I don't know, man, but it just got me to thinking that, though. You know what I mean?
The buildings were from the early Neolithic age. We're talking over 5,000 years old. The artifacts found inside, including pottery shards, stone tools, and animal bones, painted a vivid picture of Neolithic life. These were not just shelters. They were homes to farmers who cultivated barley and wheat and raised livestock like cows, sheep, and pigs. The craftsmanship of our Neolithic ancestors is nothing short of impressive. The two buildings at Nap of Howar are remarkably well preserved. The larger structure was likely...
Yeah, you can't tell me they ain't know what they was doing, bro. Just look at this. This ain't moving at all. I don't care what come through. Tornado, hurricane, this ain't budging.
The main living area, while the smaller served as a workshop or for storage. Inside, you'd find stone cupboards, hearths for warmth, and partitions that divided the space into cozy rooms. And the walls still stand around 1.6 meters high, despite millennia passing by. That's surviving the test of time with grace. Today, sitting closer to the sea due to shifting coastlines over the millennia, the Nap of Howar offers a rare peek into a past long gone but beautifully preserved. Managed by Historic Environment Scotland, this site welcomes visitors eager to walk through the doorways of history. Now let's jet over to northern Sardinia, Italy, where Monte presents a mystery of monumental proportions. So, in 1954, a guy named Ercole Contu was just moseying around a field owned by the Segni family. He stumbles upon a massive mound of earth and thinks, could this be a nuraghe? For those in the know, a nuraghe is like the old-school Sardinian version of a skyscraper, but much shorter and way older. But as he dug, what did he find? Not a nuraghe, but something even cooler. A massive stone platform with a long ramp that screams, "I'm not just any old pile of rocks." This was the moment everyone realized they'd been walking over a buried treasure without even knowing it. And not just any treasure, but a structure dating back to between 4000 and 3650 BC, crafted by the hands of the Ozieri culture. They called the first part they built the Red Temple. Fast forward a bit in the timeline, and between 3500 and 3000 BC, another enterprising group decided to give it a makeover. They piled on earth and stones, popped a new platform on top, and voila, a step pyramid, which cheekily earned it the nickname the Sardinian Ziggurat. Jumping ahead to the swinging 70s and energetic 80s, another archaeologist named Santo Tine picked up where Contu left off. From 1979 to 1989, he dug into the past, uncovering bits and bobs like pottery, tools, and animal bones. Oh, and let's not forget the standing stones called menhirs, and a hefty round stone that might have been the centerpiece at religious ceremonies. Imagine the hustle and bustle of ancient architects at work, turning a regular old hill into a layered cake of cultural significance. Monte isn't just a pile of stones, it's a snapshot of a civilization that knew a thing or two about making an impression. And just think, all of this history was just hanging out, waiting to be rediscovered, hiding in plain sight under a field in Sardinia. But assuming Monte had chosen to play a game of hide-and-seek alone, that would have been one thing. However, another structure, known as Nabta Playa, decided it wouldn't be left out. It all started in 1973, when a group trudged through the southern Egyptian desert, about 100 kilometers west of Abu Simbel. At the helm was American archaeologist Fred Wendorf. You might think they were just out for a desert stroll, but oh, they were onto something big. They started noticing stones and pottery fragments casually peeking out of the sand. Cue the intrigue and the beginning of a major archaeological reveal. Fast forward a bit, from 1974 to the early 1990s, and Wendorf, along with his team, was knee-deep in excavations at a place called Nabta Playa. They weren't just digging up dirt, they were uncovering a story. They found stone circles, hefty stone structures, and signs that once upon a time, people had called this place home. But not just any home, a home with a stellar view, quite literally. Enter one of their most headline-worthy discoveries, a stone circle that didn't just sit there looking pretty. No, this circle was aligned with the stars. Imagine living over 7,000 years ago. These folks were already mapping out the heavens. That wasn't just smart, that was ancient genius. But wait, there was more. In 1998, Wendorf decided to bring in the big shots. J. McKim Malville, a wizard in the niche field of archaeoastronomy. Malville took one look at this stone circle and confirmed it was aligned with the summer solstice. Why was that a big deal? Well, it turned out the ancient desert dwellers likely used this alignment to mark the start of the rainy season. Just when you thought your weather app was high-tech, these ancient folks were using giant rocks to plan their year. This discovery catapulted Nabta Playa into the limelight, making it one of the oldest known astronomical sites in the world. Yes, even older than Stonehenge. So next time you think of ancient astronomy, don't just picture druids in misty fields. Think of the desert dwellers of Nabta Playa, who were quite literally stars of the show. Nabta Playa's story opened a window into the lives of those who roamed the Sahara over 7,000 years ago. These weren't just survivalists braving the harsh desert conditions, they were astronomers, engineers, and architects of their own fate, guided by the stars and the seasons. Now, let's shift our gaze from the arid deserts of Africa to the wild, windswept shores of Scotland, where the ancient village of Skara Brae lurks beneath the surface, waiting for its stories to be told. Who would have thought that a ferocious Scottish storm in 1850 would rip through the earth, peeling back layers like pages in a book to reveal the remnants of a village that predates the pyramids? Now, this wasn't your average backyard find. Skara Brae is seriously old school, dating back to about 3180 BC. To put that in perspective, when the first blocks were being laid down in Giza, Skara Brae had already been a ghost town for centuries. The man of the hour, or rather the century, was William Watt. This guy owned the land where Skara Brae was just chilling under the turf. With the curiosity of a cat and probably the excitement of a kid in a candy store, Watt began digging through what the storm had unveiled. He unearthed 4 stone houses and snagged a treasure trove of artifacts. But like all good things, the excitement dwindled, and the digging eventually hit a pause. Fast forward to 1924, and Mother Nature decided she wasn't done with her revelations. Another storm swept through, this time damaging part of what had been uncovered. This caught the eye of the folks, who realized that maybe there was something pretty important here. Enter Professor V. Gordon Childe from the University of Edinburgh. In 1927, he picked up where Watt left off, digging deeper and unveiling even more of Skara Brae's secrets. Childe's team expanded the excavation, discovering more houses and a heap of ancient everyday objects that gave a peek into the daily lives of the Neolithic people who once called Skara Brae home. But how old was this old village really? Thanks to the magic of radiocarbon dating, scientists could finally put a number on it. Turns out, Skara Brae was occupied from around 3180 BC to 2500 BC. Yes, that makes it over 5,000 years old. But let's not get stuck in the Scottish past. Let's hop over to France, circa 1840. While the common folk were preoccupied with everyday concerns, Louis de la Trémoille, a curious landowner, was about to make his estate famous. During what he thought was routine land clearing, turned unusual mound formations. Little did he know, these weren't just any bumps in the landscape, they were ancient secrets waiting to be uncovered. These mounds, known as the Tumulus of...
Wait till we get to technology, to which we already have some form of like radar that they use now, but it's gonna get even better to where we don't even have to dig first. We'll be able to just scan the area and see what's underground. That could be historic, a find, or something like that. Wait, bro. I feel it is coming. And what we uncover next is going to be crazy. And it's going to be like, it's been like right up under our noses literally the whole time. I can't wait for that technology to come out.
Bougon turned out to be nothing short of spectacular. We're talking about a group of burial mounds that make the Egyptian pyramids look like recent construction projects. Yep. These structures date back to around 4,700 BC, placing them among the oldest burial mounds in Europe. Imagine the stories these stones could tell if they could talk. The discovery itself was something of a fluke. You could say curiosity didn't kill the cat this time. It unearthed a cornerstone of Neolithic architecture. This complex of megalithic tombs was a historical jackpot hidden under the serene landscape. Each tumulus at the site flaunts a distinct architectural style that makes you wonder about the craftsmanship of our Neolithic ancestors. Tumulus A, for instance, is a stepped mound with a central rectangular chamber that was home to about 200 skeletons, neatly arranged in 3 layers and separated by stone slabs. But here's a little twist. The initial reports from those early digs were a bit on the vague side, which kind of throws a wrench in the works for anyone hoping to do a detailed, chronological analysis. Archaeologist Léon Couty didn't let that stop him, though. In 1873, he dove in for a formal excavation, and it paid off. He unearthed stone tools, ceramics, and more human remains that offered a peek into the lives of those who roamed Europe over 6 millennia ago. But wait, it wouldn't be so nice of me to skip this one right here, called Cappadocia's Fairy Chimneys, nestled in the heart of Turkey. Famous for its fairy chimneys, those tall, thin rock spires were created by volcanic ash millions of years ago and shaped by erosion. These structures aren't just a treat for the eyes, they're a history lesson standing proud against the sky. And guess what? Some of the homes and churches carved into these soft rocks are believed to be even older than the Egyptian pyramids, which date back to around 2600 BC. Now, hold on to your hats, because this next part is where it gets really good. Back in 1963, a local in Nevşehir province was doing some DIY on his house when he stumbled upon a hidden room behind a wall. But this was no ordinary room, it was the gateway to the Derinkuyu underground city. Just imagine knocking down a bit of plaster in your living room and finding a secret passage to a lost city. This isn't just any underground city. We're talking about a vast, multi-level complex that dives about 280 feet deep. Talk about basement goals, right? Archaeologists got to work and figured that the initial construction started way back in the 8th or 7th century BC, possibly making these digs older than those famous pyramids. So, what was down there? Derinkuyu wasn't just a hidey hole, but a full-blown subterranean metropolis. It could house around 20,000 people, complete with apartments, kitchens, wineries, and even a religious school. Imagine living there. Your address could literally be several feet underground, past the wine cellar. They even had ventilation shafts, wells, and massive stone doors, because, let's face it, privacy is a big deal, whether you're above ground or below ground. The discovery of Derinkuyu not only turned heads, but also shone a spotlight on the ingenuity of ancient civilizations in this region. This wasn't just about survival, it was about thriving in tough conditions, turning a challenge into a lifestyle. It highlighted how Cappadocia's residents weren't just making homes, they were carving out a community, quite literally, from the ground up.
Just imagine living here, right? And I've seen what we can do this day and age with houses and different things. Imagine what we could do with that. If we were forced or had to resort to going back there, just imagine what some of the brilliant minds of architecture could do with this. Turning definitely nothing into something. Definitely. I could see it.
Discovering Derinkuyu in the 1960s provided significant insights into the region's long-standing traditions, proving that the people of Cappadocia were as much architects as they were artists. It's one thing to build a city, it's another to carve one out of the living rock itself. Now let's fast forward to another ancient marvel, Hagar Qim in Malta. Built between 3600 and 3200 BC, this old pile of rocks is even older than the pyramids in Egypt. Now that's what I call ancient. The name Hagar Qim itself means standing stones in Maltese, which is pretty straightforward, all things considered. Back in 1839, a chap named J.G. Vance, who was part of the Royal Engineers, started poking around the site. Imagine the thrill of unearthing a stone altar, a beautifully decorated slab, and not one, but 7 small stone statues. These weren't any knickknacks, they were pivotal in understanding the temple's past. These treasures were quickly whisked away to a museum in Valletta, the capital of Malta, where they probably got more attention than a celebrity on the red carpet. Then, as if the plot needed thickening, along came A.A. Caruana in 1885. This guy didn't just dig, he made detailed drawings and wrote extensive reports about his finds, which is like gold for historians and archaeologists. Fast forward to 1909, and you have Themistocles Zammit and Thomas Eric Peat jumping into the fray, digging deeper, both literally and figuratively, and unearthing more artifacts that shed light on this architectural wonder. The drama doesn't end there, though. In 1949, a real cliffhanger moment occurred when 3 small statues and pieces of a larger stone statue were discovered under a rectangular stone. It's like every layer of earth turned was a page in a mystery novel. The following year, the plot thickened with the discovery of the Venus of Malta, a statue that's as enigmatic as they come. Neither clearly male nor female, this statue sparked debates among scholars who think it might symbolize an idea or spirit, which is pretty forward-thinking for an ancient civilization, don't you think? However, the time hasn't been kind to Hagar Qim. The soft limestone from which the temple was built started to wear away over the centuries due to weather, in a move that's more...
Yeah, I was noticing a bunch of those like little porous holes and pockets that you see in the stone, and I was thinking that. Now, you could probably go to somebody and they can probably look at that and say, okay, this thing probably has this many centuries left to stand unless we preserve it. Now, that's one reason I could definitely see, you know what I mean? You trying to preserve it because the outside interference. So putting like this dome or something over it to preserve it that way, but not preserving it in a way that they do something to the actual structure. That's what I'm saying. But definitely putting a dome over top, trying to preserve it from the weather, I'm with that. But I was noticing those pockets and porous holes on this in the stone.
Preservation than renovation, a special tent was erected over the temple in 2009 to shield it from the elements. But you know which structure also has an interesting history behind it? It's Agrigento on Sicily's sunny coast. Let's zip back to around 580 BC. Yeah, that far back. That's when some adventurous Greeks from Gela decided to stamp their mark and set up the colony of Akragas, right where Agrigento stands today. Now, before Tommaso Fazzello stepped onto the scene, most folks just walked past these old stones without a second glance. Born in 1498 in the nearby town of Sciacca, this Italian Dominican friar turned historian was no ordinary dude. He was more like the Sherlock Holmes of Sicilian antiquity. In his killer book, De Rebus Siculis Decades Duae, which hit the shelves in Palermo in 1558, Fazzello rolled out the red carpet for these ancient sites, including good old Akragas. His work wasn't just a dust-dry recount, it was the spark that lit the fire of archaeological fervor in Sicily. Fast forward to the 19th century, and the Valley of the Temples is pulling crowds again, like a classical Coachella. Archaeologists got down and dirty, digging up and sprucing up some jaw-dropping structures. Take the Temple of Olympian Zeus. This behemoth, even in ruins, is like the heavyweight champ of Greek architecture, showing off the lofty ambitions of its ancient builders. But wait, there's more. In 2014, Maria Concetta Perello and her team of history buffs launched a deep dive into Agrigento's soil. They unearthed the ancient theater of Akragas, a cultural hotspot where the ancients probably kicked back to watch the latest Sophocles play. This find wasn't just cool. It was a VIP pass to understanding the social and cultural vibes of the times. Now, don't think the discoveries stopped there. The archaeology game has leveled up big time. By 2024, thanks to some nifty geophysical surveys over an impressive 30,000 square feet around the main temples, a new building came into the limelight. What are your thoughts on this astonishing 12,000-year-old structure that predates the pyramids? Share your opinions in the comments below. If you found this discovery fascinating...
I've already shared my thoughts. Y'all let me know, man, what y'all thought, especially about what I said in the beginning, man. Like, maybe we are looking at some things wrong. Maybe we're not. I don't know. But these are the questions that I have. If we're looking at this thing backwards and we're starting it from the wrong time, maybe we're looking at the beginning, but we should be looking at what we deem as the beginning as the end for them. And we're missing the beginning. Just interesting. Y'all let me know what you think.